Level 1. The gate. The door opens outward. Every door you've touched for the last 6 years opened inward. This one opens outward, and for a second you just stand there with your hand on the bar. The air outside is different. Not better. Just different. You're holding a clear plastic bag with everything you own. You don't have a plan. You have an address. A halfway house 40 minutes away by bus. Assuming the route hasn't changed. It has, and you find out at the stop. A man waiting there tells you the 14 doesn't run on this side anymore. You wait 40 minutes for the rerouted bus, sitting on a concrete barrier, watching cars pass. The bus comes. You pay with coins. You sit in the back. You watch the city go by like a film about a place you used to live. The storefronts are different. Half the places you remember are gone. New ones you don't recognize have taken their place. The city didn't pause. It didn't even notice. You get off 2 stops early because you're not sure of the street numbers, and you walk the last 6 blocks carrying your bag. It's not heavy. The lightness is almost insulting. The halfway house is a gray building with a metal screen door and a sign that has been repainted over so many times the letters are slightly raised. You ring the bell. A woman opens the door, checks your name against a clipboard, and shows you to a room. In the room there are 3 other men. 4 bunks and 1 window facing a brick wall. You pick a bunk and sit down. You don't think about tomorrow yet. You think about dinner because someone said dinner is at 6, and it's currently 4:47, and knowing what's happening in the next hour is about as far forward as your mind will go right now. Level 2. The form. There is a question on every job application. It lives on page 2 or buried in the middle or sometimes right at the top like a warning. It says, "Have you ever been convicted of a felony?" You check yes. Then there is a box that says, "If yes, please explain." You have typed that explanation so many times it no longer sounds like you wrote it. It sounds like a legal brief. You apply to a warehouse in the industrial district. You get an interview. The manager shakes your hand, seems genuinely interested, spends 20 minutes with you. He says he'll be in touch. 3 days later, you get an automated email. "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." You apply to a kitchen. Same result. A grocery chain. A moving company. A landscaping crew. A hotel. By the 3rd week, you've applied to 19 places and heard back from 6, and of those 6, 2 became interviews, and of those 2, 0 became jobs. You drop your salary expectations. You apply further out, taking 2 buses to places 30 minutes away because maybe the hiring manager there hasn't run your background yet. Or maybe Henry at the moving company is one of those people who actually believes in second chances because he said so in writing on his website. Henry calls you on a Thursday and he says come in Monday. You come in Monday. He hands you a vest and says, "You lift, you show up, you keep it professional with customers." That's the whole orientation. You nod and you're hired at $13.50 an hour. You're 38 years old, carrying furniture upstairs for $13.50 an hour. In reality, it's the most legitimate money you've earned in 6 years. The distinction feels enormous inside your chest and invisible from the outside. You don't explain that to anyone. You just show up Tuesday. Level 3. The rules of this place. The halfway house runs on a system you have to learn the same way you learned every other system you've been inside, by watching, staying quiet, and not making assumptions. Curfew is 9. Not 9:15. Not 5 minutes after 9 with a story. 9. You sign out every time you leave and sign back in every time you return. Your parole officer has access to those logs. No alcohol on the property. No guests. Chores rotate weekly. Lights out is technically optional, but the building's generator hums loudly between 11 and 5, and if you're light sensitive, it's essentially not optional. There are 3 other men in your room. You learn their names because you have to. You don't ask what they were in for. No one asks you. That's a courtesy that functions like a rule. One of them, a man named Trevor, has been out 4 months and already has a second job. He works mornings at a diner and evenings stocking a pharmacy. He sleeps 6 hours and doesn't complain. You watch how he moves through the halfway house. You decide to take notes on that. The caseworkers here are not social workers in the way that phrase usually sounds. They are administrators. They have caseloads. They have quotas. They are not your enemies, but they are not your advocates either. The system you're in now is kinder than the last one, but it operates on the same basic logic. You start building routines. Wake at 5:30. Cold shower before the hot water runs out. Bus by 7. Work 8 to 5. Home by 6:15. Dinner. Room. Read until your eyes close. The routine is not exciting. The routine is the scaffolding everything else gets built on. You understand that now in a way you didn't at 22. Level 4. First money. The check is for $412. You hold it for a moment before you fold it. You've held more than this in your life. You cash it at the bank with your state ID and the account information your caseworker helped you set up. You put $200 in savings. You keep $212 for the next 2 weeks. You buy your mother a small potted plant from the grocery store on the way to Sunday dinner. You just hand it to her when she opens the door. She puts it on the windowsill in the kitchen. When you leave, she walks you to the bus stop the way she used to when you were a kid. She holds your arm the whole 2 blocks. She doesn't say much. She doesn't need to. At work, you've gotten faster. You understand the rhythm of the job, how to read a floor plan quickly, how to wrap corners without tape slippage. Your supervisor is 24 and sometimes unsure how to address you. You let him figure it out. You do your job. You're never the problem. Henry notices. He doesn't say much, but he gives you the Tuesday through Thursday routes, which are the longer hauls that pay an extra hour each. You get a small raise and you take it. There is a version of pride available to you here that you haven't had access to in years. You're bringing in roughly $1,100 a month after taxes. Your split of the halfway house costs $350. You keep the number in your head like a compass heading. You are not there yet, but getting there. Level 5. Rejection has a shape. It's not always hostile. That's the thing they don't tell you. Sometimes it's a neighbor who used to nod at you in the elevator and now finds his phone extremely interesting when the doors close. Sometimes it's a woman at church who knew your mother and now asks how you're doing with an inflection that means she already knows and is deciding what to do with that information. Sometimes it's a job offer that evaporates 48 hours after they said the role was yours. There's a version of yourself that would have reacted loudly to this, back when loud felt like protection. You start going to a community workshop on Saturday mornings. Not because you were assigned to, because the flyer was in the library and you had nothing scheduled and something in the description, for people navigating the gap between incarceration and stability, was specific enough to feel honest. The man who runs it is named Daniel. He spent 11 years inside, came out with nothing, and is now running a nonprofit with 4 staff members and a waiting list. He doesn't present himself as a success story. He presents himself as someone who made specific decisions and tracked what happened. You like that framing and you start going every week. The rejection doesn't stop, but it starts to feel less personal and more structural. You learn that there are employers who specifically hire people with records. You apply to a logistics company that Henry mentions. They hire you part-time, evenings, loading trucks. You're now working days at the moving company and 3 evenings a week at the warehouse. Your body hurts. Level 6. The Parole Clock. Every other Tuesday, you take 2 buses downtown to a beige building with fluorescent lighting and chairs bolted to the floor. You sign in and you wait. Your parole officer, a woman named Ms. Chavez, calls you in. She asks the standard questions. Employment, residence, contact with known felons, drug and alcohol use. You answer all of them correctly, because they are all correctly answered. The meeting takes 11 minutes. You know because you've started counting. 11 minutes every other Tuesday. You have 18 months left on supervision. You know the number. You have it marked not on a calendar but in your head, the way you used to mark dates inside. Outside the building there are always other men waiting. You recognize the posture, coats on even in warm weather, eyes forward, not checking phones because some of them don't have phones. You used to be sitting in those chairs. You don't look away from them the way some people look away from you. You nod. Sometimes they nod back. Sometimes they're too far in their own heads to notice. That's fine. You understand that too. Level 7. Almost breaking. It's a Tuesday in November when nothing specific goes wrong. Just an evening that is very quiet and very empty. What you sit with tonight is smaller and more specific. A friend's wedding you missed. Your nephew's first birthday. Your niece learning to walk. Your mother aging in photographs sent to you on paper because that's all that was allowed. You don't use, but you drink more than you should. A half bottle of whiskey. Alone in your room at the halfway house with the window cracked. You miss work the next morning for the first time. Henry calls at 9 a.m. You don't answer. You stay in bed until noon. You know exactly what you're doing. Thursday morning, you call Henry before he calls again. You tell him enough of the truth to be honest without making it a confession. He listens. He says, "Come in Friday. Don't make it a pattern." You say you won't. You call the counselor you've been canceling on for 6 weeks. You make an appointment for Monday. The next morning you're on the bus by 6:45. You do your job. You come home. You sleep. You're still here. Level 8. The room you rent alone. 7 months in, you move out of the halfway house. The room is on the 3rd floor of a building in a neighborhood that is neither good nor bad. The room costs $620. It has a window that faces a parking lot. A small closet. A radiator that clangs once at midnight every night with no apparent cause. You are still on parole. You are still reporting every other Tuesday. You are still working 2 jobs for a total of about $2,100 a month. You have $1,340 in a savings account. But this room is yours. There is no one on the other side of a wall who can revoke it with a clipboard. You start doing more with Daniel's nonprofit on weekends. Not officially, you're just there, helping set up chairs, talking to new arrivals, answering the questions nobody asks in front of the group. You are good at this. You understand it from the inside. Daniel notices. He asks if you want to become a volunteer coordinator. There's no pay. You say yes immediately. You take a forklift certification course on Saturday mornings. You pass. The logistics company bumps you to full-time. You leave the moving job. The new base is $18 an hour with benefits. You've never had employer health insurance before. You sit in the HR office for 30 minutes filling out forms you don't entirely understand, and when you walk out you have dental coverage, and for some reason that's the thing that makes you call your mother on the walk to the bus. She picks up on the second ring. Level 9. What compound interest feels like. 9 months after getting out, you clear $2,400 in a month for the first time. You have $2,900 in savings. You are not wealthy. You are not close to wealthy. But you are a person who, when something breaks, can pay to fix it. You start paying attention to your credit score. You get a secured card with a $300 limit. You use it for groceries and you pay it off the same day. Your parole officer notes at your biweekly meeting that your employment record has been consistent for over 8 months. She uses the word commendable. It is the first non-procedural word she has ever used in your presence. You write it down when you get home, not because you need the validation, because the documentation matters. You're building a record now the same way you once built a reputation, but in the opposite direction. Daniel asks you to lead a session at the workshop. Not assist but lead. You prepare for 2 weeks. You write and rewrite what you want to say. You keep cutting the parts that sound inspirational and keeping the parts that sound true. On the morning of the session you stand in front of 23 men in folding chairs and you talk for 40 minutes about the specific texture of coming back. 2 men stay after to talk. One of them has been out 11 days. He asks how you kept going when it didn't feel like it was working. You tell him the truth. Most of the time it doesn't feel like it's working. He nods slowly, like he's memorizing it. You remember being him. You were him not that long ago. Level 10. The parole end date. The letter arrives on a Thursday. Standard envelope. Your name printed in that specific bureaucratic typeface you've come to recognize. You open it at the kitchen table in your room, with your coffee getting cold beside you. Your supervised release is complete as of the date listed. No further reporting requirements. No conditions of travel. Your case is closed. You read it twice. Then you fold it carefully along the original crease and put it in the folder where you keep your important documents. Right behind your social security card and right in front of your forklift certification. You don't celebrate loudly. You're not that person anymore and maybe you never were. You call your mother. She cries a little, quietly, the way she cries, just her breathing changing slightly. You stay on the phone for an hour talking about nothing specific. Her garden, a cousin's new baby, a show she's watching. When you hang up, it's dark outside. You sit for a while. You are free. Not in the way you imagined freedom when you were inside. That version was loud and immediate, a feeling you expected to hit you like weather. This is quieter. It's the absence of something. No appointment in 2 weeks, no log to sign, no question to answer correctly. The absence has weight and you breathe into it. Level 11. Building towards something real. Daniel brings you on staff at the nonprofit. You are now working 60+ hours a week, coordinating reentry workshops. You listen to podcasts about small business operations on the bus. You start a folder, physical, a 3-ring binder of things you've noticed, things men ask you that nobody has a clear answer to, systems that could work better. Your savings hit $6,000. You open a Roth IRA because a guy at the logistics company explains what it is, and you spend 3 days reading about it before deciding he was right. You contribute $100 a month. You call your nephew on his birthday. He's 7 now. He knows your name but not your story. Someday he might. You've stopped deciding in advance what that conversation will look like. Your credit score crosses 650. This is objectively a mediocre credit score. You treat it like a trophy. You're not where you want to be. You're not even close. But you're moving in a direction, and the direction is consistent, and consistency, you've learned, is what reentry programs talk about when they say momentum. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks like Tuesday. You keep going. Level 12. Going back. The facility looks smaller from the outside. You've heard people say this. You understand it now. When it was your entire world, it filled your entire perception. You sign in at the front. You hand over your ID. You state your purpose, volunteer speaker. Approved by the program coordinator. You wait to be buzzed through. The sound is the same. The smell is the same. Institutional cleaner and metal and something that doesn't have a name but that your body recognizes before your mind does. You walk through a hallway you walked in the opposite direction 18 months ago. A room, 30 men, folding chairs, fluorescent light. You stand at the front. You don't tell them it gets better. That framing is for people who need to believe something without evidence. Most of the men in this room have been disappointed by that sentence before. You tell them what you actually did. The check for $412. The form with the question. The room facing the parking lot. The 11-minute meetings. You tell them the part that doesn't make it into most versions of this story. It is slow. It is boring in stretches. There will be months where you do everything right and nothing appears to change. The gap between action and result is long, and most people stop in that gap. The only thing that determines whether you're still there when the results arrive is whether you kept going when it didn't look like working. In the back row, a young man has his arms crossed and is staring at the wall. He's listening. You can tell by the stillness. You were him. Not long ago, in the scale of things, you were exactly him. You answer every question. You stay 30 minutes past when you were supposed to leave. You shake hands. You give your card, a real card, with your name and the nonprofit's name on it. Then you sign out and you walk back down the hallway, and they buzz you through and you push the door open. Outward. It opens outward. You stand in the parking lot for a moment and breathe the outside air. Somewhere behind you, a man is sitting in a chair in a room figuring out whether anything you said was true. But he's going to find out. The gate will open for him eventually. And when it does, he's going to stand on the other side of it with a plastic bag and a check and no idea what comes next.